And so at 6 a.m. we set it live. Our like emails to all our VIP signups weren't even supposed to go out till 7. And I set it live, and our friend Jenny is like waiting to...
she wanted to be the first backer.
To be the first backer. So she got up early, and she's sitting on chat with us. And I'm like, okay, it's live. And I send her the link. And as I'm pasting her the link, it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And I'm like, Jen, you gotta log in faster. You're not even gonna make top 100 at this point. And she's like, I'm trying. I can't remember my password. Oh God. And it's like, so we were, funded in 16 minutes. Jenny made backer like 68 or something like that. And she backed us like 4 minutes in.
In this episode of Masters of Crowdfunding, we have Amy and Dusty Droz of Dux Somnium Games. Now, Amy and Dusty launched their very first Kickstarter campaign in May of 2023 with the launch of their board game called BOTANY. Now, this was a huge hit on Kickstarter. In the first 24 hours, they raised over $100,000. And by the end of the campaign, they went over $1 million. Now, you may not know this, but getting over $1 million put them in the top 0.13% of all campaigns ever on Kickstarter. So they graciously share all the lessons learned, the ups, the downs, everything in between, so you can apply it to your own crowdfunding launch. So without further ado, I give you Amy and Dusty Droz.
Thank you for having us.
Excited to dive in. So BOTANY has been a huge success. First crowdfunding campaign for both of you. But before we get into BOTANY, I've heard that you both are high school sweethearts. I'd actually love to go back to the beginning a little bit. How did y'all meet?
It was like first day of freshman year of high school, and we had gone to 2 different elementary schools. And I walked around the corner in our high school, actually had an actual indoor hallway, which is not that common in California. And she's just sitting by herself in the hallway, and it was like straight out of a movie. I was like, oh my God, that's the most beautiful girl I've ever seen in my entire life. It took me like 3 months to work my way up to like actually talking to her. And I went straight to, will you date me? No intro, no nothing. And she panicked and said yes. And here we are.
Yeah. Put him in the friend zone for a while.
Yeah, she did friend zone me for a while. Yeah, I wasn't cool with it.
That's important. Yeah, Amy, what was your perspective on it? Same story?
Slightly different. I actually remember, when you get all the freshmen together and have the meetup, he asked this other girl for she asked you, Jenna asked you for a breath mint. That's my first remembrance of him.
Box of the Tic Tacs were my entry to get in. If people were just using me for the Tic Tacs, I realize now. But back then, I thought it was a great icebreaker. You want a Tic Tac?
But yeah, I panicked, said yes, and then put him in the friend zone.
And here we are.
And here we are. And now BOTANY is, like I said, a huge hit on Kickstarter. But I'd love to go back. How did you even come up with BOTANY? You can go tell the whole story. What was it about the background that led you to this idea?
So we've always loved gaming together. Dusty's grandma was big into gaming. So in high school, we played Rummy 13?
Rummy 13 with her
all the time. And then
I've been playing Star Wars CCG and Magic and BattleTech and Axis and Allies since I was a kid. And so as we started, when we started dating, I started looking for games that we could kind of that she could play too, because she's not into the really hardcore ones. And so we started playing things like Dominion and Munchkin, and then it just sort of branched from there.
And then I've always loved vintage things and Jane Austen and vintage books. And then flowers, of course. And then so during COVID, we started doing a lavender farm, and we started selling flower presses. We would make wooden flower presses and sell them on Etsy. And then, Dusty wanted to paint some miniatures. I had doubts on his painting ability.
I have wanted to paint miniatures for a long, long time. And Amazon had a sale, and this sounds silly, but this is absolutely the reason the business got started. Amazon had a sale on Star Wars Legion, and I said, I'm going to do it. I'm going to paint miniatures. So I bought the core box of Star Wars Legion. This was last year.
He did much better than I anticipated.
Yeah. Nobody believed in my painting skills. And then, so then it spiraled from there. Then I was like, ooh, it'd be cool if I could print my own miniatures. I want a 3D printer. Well, if I want a 3D printer, I see people sell 3D prints on Etsy. We are already set up for Etsy. What if I started an Etsy store where I sell 3D prints? Well, all these people are selling this, every single store on Etsy is selling the same prints. So why is anybody going to go with me instead of this other guy who sold so much more? Oh, well, we need to come up with some way to differentiate. Well, if we're going to differentiate, we could pay a sculptor to make prints that were unique to, or sculpts that were unique to us. Well, if we're making sculpts that are unique to us, we should make a board game. And then, so we have another game that's in process called Dream Sliver, and that's sort of going slow.
Realize like that all, it was costing a lot more than we...
And taking a long time. Yeah, it's a slow process.
And so then I love like reading about flowers and like the historical aspect of the Victorians and stuff and the flower hunting. And I'm like, what if we made a board game about flower hunting?
Right here in the kitchen, she said that to me. And my first thought was our shelf has things like, wingspan and and parks and like a lot of very non-traditional, non-nerd or not. I guess there are bird nerds, right? Different kind of nerd. Right, not fantasy and sci-fi board games that are out there. And I said, yeah, I think that sounds like it could work. Let's try it. And within...
Then we were like, we could use public domain images since it's the botanical illustrations that I love so much. And
so like 90% of the gameplay was done 2 weeks later. We'd figured it all out. And it was just a matter of like refining it from there.
I mean, there's one thing to, be someone that enjoys board games and tabletop games and all the other things that, all the other interests that you were talking about. And it's another thing to create a tabletop game. How did you figure that out? How did you learn how to create a good game?
That's a good question.
Yeah, so we were just like talking about, okay, what would they have done in the Victorian time? And then we realized later it's actually a process.
It's a real methodology. Yeah.
That we didn't know.
We approached it super logically. So, and we found there's a methodology of board game creation that's based on like implementation of like real world things. And so that's what we did. And we're like, okay, well, what's the game about? Well, it's about collecting flowers around the world. Okay, well, so what would make sense for that? Well, we should have a world map and you should be going around the world. And then it was like, okay, well, what? That's interesting, but what else? These
expeditions would take years. But so we're like, we can't do years, but we could do a certain number and then they would return. Mm-hmm. And with flower presses, those were a lot cheaper to get the plant specimens. And then during the Victorian time, these Wardian cases came out. And so they allowed you to like preserve and take your specimens home with
keep them alive.
Life expectancy.
So that's how the Warden cases made their way in the game. And then Amy is telling me all these stories about like, all these really random things happen to people. We're like, well, then it would make sense to have events in the game. And every time you do stuff, you got to deal with the consequences of the events. And then how do they deal with these events? Well, they would prepare.
Events were crazy.
Yeah, like guys on the side of a volcano and the volcano's erupting and they fall in a pit trap with a bull on it and the dude was missing an eye and he had a pet falcon and
no blood.
Yeah, and it was just like you couldn't make these stories up. Like the most outrageous cards in the game are the most likely to be like just full on true stories that we borrowed. And so then they need items and they take crew and some of them had pets and so we sort of built the entire game out off of the story, which is like a design methodology that works like really well for us because instead of trying to create things out of thin air, you have a story and you're sort of modeling, you're using the game and the mechanics to model like how, what the game-based representation of that would be.
Makes sense. And what were your two individual roles in the game? I'm sure there were, or in terms of creating the game, I'm sure there was overlap, of course, but were there certain things that you specialized in?
Yeah, Dusty actually wrote pretty much all the things. I would give him like the ideas because I was researching and reading all these crazy things. And I would be like, Dust, I just read a story where this guy was in like Africa and he took a little sprig of a plant, stuck it in his pocket, and his toothbrush was in it.
Because that's where you keep your toothbrush.
And then he brushed his teeth the next morning and his heart started slowing down. We should do a card on that. And so then I would find some sort of graphic or picture or something. And then Dusty would write. And I did all the graphic design. Dusty did all the like he came up. I mean, we discussed all the mechanics.
Yeah.
But he did the writing.
The math, like a lot more of the math.
Dusty's the math. I'm the creative. Like
Amy does. Yeah, Amy creates, and I facilitate her creation.
yeah, the graphic design, all the cards and stuff.
And I do all the business stuff. Amy does all the research. Yeah.
Okay, now talking about business in terms of, you know, deciding to bring this product to life, how did you decide on crowdfunding was going to be the platform to actually launch your game?
We had backed some stuff over the years, like really big projects or things we knew.
And my brother had also done one in 2014.
Yeah, and he made like $27,000, which was awesome, like unbelievable, mind-blowing amount of money for his game. And so we thought, okay, well, you know, we have to, you know, if you want to go to the manufacturer, most of them have a minimum order quantity that they require, which requires a fair amount of capital. And so, you know, we were looking at Kickstarter and stuff, and we're like, well, you know, this is basically just pre-orders for the game. And so if we raise enough money through pre-orders to fund the minimum order quantity, then we're all set, and we can, you know, we were really hoping to maybe get like 500 backers, and which would have been incredible, and that would have given us enough to make our minimum order quantity and maybe have like 1,000 units left over to sell through the store. And then the plan was then to sell those units and use it to fund more board games and sort of, you know, kind of build up the business from there. And so it just seemed like a good way to literally kickstart the business.
I was asking about minimum order quantity. You mentioned that you knew what that was going into it. Some people are,
oh yeah,
it's not an obvious thing what it is. I'm curious how you even figured, well, first off, what is it, just for people that don't know, and how did you figure out what that minimum order quantity was for BOTANY?
So we didn't have a darn clue what it took to manufacture anything a year ago. So we've done a lot of learning. And actually, when we started talking to you guys, Maria was kind of talking to us about, oh, do you have your manufacturer and stuff? And we said, no, we don't have a clue. And she was the one that actually found this great list of manufacturers, and top of the list was our manufacturer, Panda. And so then we started talking to them. We started talking to their manufacturers, and we immediately saw, okay, you know, they have a like a scaled pricing. So the more you order, the more the pricing comes down. So when you get a quote from them, they're like, okay, well, our minimum order quantity is 2,000 units, and the price at 2,000 units is this much, and the price at, you know, 5,000, 10,000. So they'd have breakpoints where the price came down. But yeah, we did not understand what that was until I started looking into what it would take to make a game, to know how much money we'd even need to have, to know how much to even save and or hope to get from Kickstarter.
Got it. I do feel like there's a lot of people that their plan is to launch their campaign and then figure out manufacturing later. You know, you went the other direction of finding the manufacturer beforehand. Yeah, can you talk about some of the benefits? I mean, obviously you went in this direction of finding the manufacturer before you launched, but maybe the reasons why you did that and why you think that is so important to do before you launch.
Well, I mean, you know, Kickstarter isn't just give me a ton of money. Kickstarter is business sales, right? And so you don't want to sell an item without knowing how much it costs you, without knowing how much product you need, and if you're how much profit you're going to have, I should say,
and how much the product weighs, because the shipping
yeah
changes.
And so you got to know every ounce of every bit of math of what it's going to cost you to get that unit to the person that you sold it to on Kickstarter. And if you
just do a Kickstarter and say, oh, my product's $40, but it ends up costing you $50.
Yeah, then you're messed over. And that's how you hear some of these horror stories, and that's how that happened, is they didn't know, or the prices changed drastically, and they didn't have a mechanism built in to deal with those changes, or you know, weren't aware of it in the first place. So you know, Kickstarter isn't just, I have a bunch of money and now I can make the thing. Kickstarter, like I said, it's effectively pre-orders, and like any other sale, you need to know exactly what's going into it and exactly what's coming out of it, so that you can make decisions on, you know, what's my budget for advertising, and you know, can I order extra stock? Because in our case, the plan had always been that we were going to have enough to buy more than just the stock to fulfill our Kickstarter orders, so that we could,
at least that was our hope.
Yeah. So that we could then continue to run the business, sell product, fund, continue a revenue stream, and fund the next game, which we can, so that when we launch our next Kickstarter, then it's the same thing again, that it's just another round of pre-orders, and it's not, let's see how much money we get and then hope we can make it work kind of thing. Like you got to know every ounce of it going into it.
So on the very first day, you raised over $100,000 in 24 hours, which is a wild amount. I actually want to go back to, what was that like? Like, take us back to what that feeling was like seeing that. And also, was it like meeting your expectations, exceeding, under your expectations? Yeah, just bring us back to that moment.
Well, maybe should we go back to how we found you guys first?
Yeah, we didn't have a clue how to Kickstarter. So we typed in how to Kickstarter on Google, and that's how we found you. And
we're like, oh my gosh, their promises sound too good to be true.
Yeah, we're like, so I was talking to Maria, and poor Maria, I grilled her a ton when she was selling us on everything. What are your numbers and what's the average? And can you show me a bunch of campaigns? And, these were all really successful campaigns. Okay, cool. And so
do you think we could make about,
she was like, what do you want to make? We're like, we want to make like, I said, if we made $10,000, I think that'd be cool. And if we made
80, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, 80 would be more than we could ever imagine. There would be enough to buy like 5,000 units and fill the backers and really run our business. And, So we, obviously through the whole launch room curriculum, as we're going through it, we're like building up an idea of like what, how much we need to make and what we want to hit and what our goals would be. And, like we had phased goals where we're like, okay, well, if we hit $5,000, great, we're in business, let's go. And then if we hit $38,000, perfect, we can pay back the National Bank of Mom and Dad that had helped fund some of this stuff. And buy a bunch of units, and even better. And if we make 85, well, that's, I guess that's the upper limit of our dreams, because we can't think any farther than that. And cool, unbelievable.
Yeah, and then we started doing the ads with you guys, and we're like, oh my gosh, they're doing so well.
Yeah, we had 2,600 VIP signups, and so we started thinking, wow, this might actually work. Like, there are people that actually want the game. Well, that's really cool.
So yeah, then when we did the first day, we were like, oh, nothing's good. I mean, it felt like Christmas.
I actually told Amy at 5:30 in the morning while we're sitting there waiting to start it, here's what's going to happen. We are going to click go live.
And nothing's going
to happen. And then
until we email our...
Yeah, then we're going to send out the emails, and then some people will and then spend the rest of the day refreshing the page, and maybe every half hour, like one person or two people will buy it. So let's just plan for a day where we're constantly refreshing the screen and everything goes slow. And so at 6 a.m. we set it live. Our like emails to all our VIP signups weren't even supposed to go out till 7. And I set it live, and our friend Jenny is like waiting to...
she wanted to be the first backer.
To be the first backer. So she got up early, and she's sitting on chat with us. And I'm like, okay, it's live. And I send her the link. And as I'm pasting her the link, it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And I'm like, Jen, you got to log in faster. You're not even going to make top 100 at this point. And she's like, I'm trying. I can't remember my password. Oh God. And it's like, so we were, funded in 16 minutes. Jenny made back her like 68 or something like that. And she backed us like 4 minutes in.
And then like we called, we were just in disbelief. We're still in disbelief.
Yeah. My family was asleep. And so we finally called them at like 7.
We made already 50,000.
We're like, and it's just climbing. And so by lunch,
we're like, what, on a game?
Yeah.
On a board game?
And then by the afternoon, we'd hit that 85,000 mark. And I looked at Amy, and I'm like, after this point, it's all just a bonus. Like we hit our wildest dreams in the first day. And then, yeah.
Well, and then also like what you guys suggested to do, we used Gel Up.
Yep.
So, I mean, like...
Gel kept things moving really well. It just kept going. We kept finding new people that wanted the game, like the whole campaign. And
my flower friends, and like there's a lot of people that love gardening like I do, and love vintage and
there had not been a Victoriana gardening like flower themed board game made for people before, so we found a really good market niche that didn't have a lot of other competition.
No one's made that game.
Yeah.
That's an amazing story. I like the feeling that you're talking about is probably the coolest thing to hear about. And we've been a part of so many campaigns now, like going back to 2013. And I've personally woken up so many times at, 5 a.m. to be a part of the launch, or even press the launch button for a lot of our clients in the past, and watching, 1, 2, 3, like all types of backers come in, hit the goal, and then, 15 minutes and a few minutes, whatever it might be, is extremely exciting. and validating for what you created.
Yeah, we're already nervous for our next game.
Like the next one, like we're like, what if the next one isn't as big as this one? But it doesn't matter. It's just a pre-order, gauges demand. It's all good. Like, and now the nice thing is that with its infrastructure and this plan we have built with you guys and we have built with our other vendors, like to us, it's not a matter of if the game will be successful, because it will be. Like, we have a fan base and everything is there, and Launch Boom was like a massive part of building that fan base.
It will be about flowers.
Yeah, it's about flowers. But it's just like it's more of like, okay, well, let's see how successful it is, and that will help us figure out how many orders we need to play, how many units we need to order. Like, it's actually just like a part of regular business now. We have a level of confidence that just because we have seen how it works, and we know we have the people like on board to help us make sure that it is successful.
So let's go back to, how the pre-launch worked. You already mentioned, you had over 2,000 VIPs. Can you explain to everyone listening, what is a VIP? What did you do? How did the advertising work? I know this is a bigger question and we can break it up into parts, but maybe just start by explaining this whole reservation funnel and what that is.
It was actually a lot simpler than I thought it was going to be. And, as most things are, where you think there's going to be some magic and you're like, oh, wow, this makes perfect sense. So basically what we did is we offered this 8-card little mini expansion, and it goes in with the game. It has a character. It has some unique blue flowers. And so the only place you could get it was for $1. You could buy it as like a reservation and a VIP status for our Kickstarter campaign. And so they got the mini expansion when they backed our campaign. They got access to our Facebook group, so they're the first one to know about everything. And so we created a landing page, and we started doing advertising for that landing page. And so, people came, and we had 2,600 people actually pay the $1 to get access to that mini expansion. And then we had another 6,500 people leave their email because they still were interested in the game. They just didn't want to put the $1 down or whatever.
And then also, like, we got all the advertising by watching all of your guys'.
Yeah, and then jumping on office hours and going through it in detail with Hera and Justin and Soren. And so
game boxes are the way to go.
Yeah.
A shot of the game box was our best
performing image. But so we started to get an idea of, okay, like, we have demand for this. We have a big following base. The conversion rate, based on all the the historic data you guys had, the conversion rate on anybody that put that $1 down was extremely high, and you guys told us it would be 35 to 45%. And sure enough, we landed at like 43, 44% conversion rate on all those $1 reservations. So like going into the day, it's about as certain as you can be about how many backers you're going to get based on that group, without, having actually just made the sale. And so we knew with reasonable certainty, and that spreadsheet you guys have was super useful about how to, figure all that stuff out, that we were going to have, like 1,000-ish backers, no problem. And based on that, we could infer, okay, well then we'll make, this much money and we'll be able to do this. And so, we felt really good about getting funded, rather than just flipping the switch and like hoping it all worked out. Like I felt, there's still that little sense of uncertainty, but I just felt like we were so.
And then all
prepared.
The momentum that you get from the first day backers helps you get on things like
more
projects
momentum.
We love, and gets you to the top of the Kickstarter page. So
the magic and the popularity list.
So
yeah.
More backers
Yeah.
may not have seen you.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for going through that. I actually want to go back. Well, actually, before I go back, just to give, a quick, concise, like overview of what you went over, just so like listeners like fully understand, like really what they're talking about is in the pre-launch, you can build up an email list of people, potential backers that want to back your project. But it's a little bit further than just getting an email. You also give people the opportunity to put down a reservation. In this case, it was $1, and they would get this extra like exclusive add-on. It was Brilliant Blue Botanicals was the name of it, I believe. And in doing that, you're having people essentially make another commitment, which is a better sign that they're actually even more interested in backing your campaign. And they had over 2,000 people that put down this $1 reservation. And so once they actually went to launch, now they had this big list of people that were very, very interested in backing the campaign, which then helped the campaign do over 6 figures in 24 hours. Now, I want to go back to the advertising portion. You already talked about some tips. Image of the board game can work, but even before that, was this your first time running meta ads or Facebook ads?
We have a wedding photography business, and we had tried, but they never really worked for us.
They got us some followers and stuff, but it's not. I don't know. Weddings are a very big ticket item, and it's a service oriented. Even your photos, even though we're delivering a product to you, you're still hiring us for a service on the wedding day. And so, we didn't have any guidance, and the advertising game is just completely different than it is for like retail.
$20.
Yeah.
And that was it.
And so, I don't know where we would have even started if we had not, had LaunchBoom helping us like figure out what ads to run and the whole process of, here's step by step how you go about testing so you can find the best performing ads and, images and text and, that whole structure. Yeah, we would not have known where to begin or what to do or even how to interpret the data once we were having it come through. So when I say the $1 reservation, the reservation system is simple. That part, that's simple and, and just like mind blowing how much sense that makes. And it's so nice to have LaunchBoom structure to facilitate that. But then on top of that, all the added value of even how do we get there? How do we get people to the reservation? How
do we target? So like you would think that we would be targeting like board game lovers, but we found out that one of our highest converting were magazines?
Gardening publications. Yeah.
Gardening publications.
We went through your LaunchBoom like list of like, here's our really good performing audiences we have created. And I just happened to click on like the outdoor and garden section. I'm like, let's see if anything in here sticks, whatever. And I'll throw it out there. And it performed as well as the board game sections did. So so we had a lot of people come from outside of the general, like, I never see board game ads. It's so fortuitous.
This is the most targeted Facebook ad I've ever seen.
How did you come up with this? Like, how did you even think to advertise? How did I see this? And then like, well, it's probably because you're interested in better homes and gardens, and who knew, right? Like,
yeah, it's really cool, and I think that's one of the biggest or coolest things about this campaign is that you were able to go after, let's call it like the non-tabletop board game audience when it came to the advertising. This tactic, I think, is like very important to point out because I think it could be very useful for other games as well to think outside the typical box of, okay, if I'm targeting a certain audience on Facebook, I'm going to go after people that are interested in board game related interests. Of course, that makes sense. You should probably do that, definitely. But what are some other interests that they may have that would fit with your game? In your case, of course, gardening. People are interested in botany. That's going to be something that would probably resonate with this audience, and it ended up being one of your best performing audiences. So it's really awesome that you did that. I love that you did that. And, obviously the results speak for themselves. Now, another thing I want to focus on is when it comes to a successful Kickstarter campaign, really any successful product launch, positioning is really so important. Like how you message and position your product, your board game in this instance. And I think the results speak for themselves that y'all nailed it. How did you come up with your positioning? Like, was there a process that you followed?
Okay, so we could not articulate it at first, but we had basically built a game that Amy would like to play. Yeah. And so there are lots of mechanics that I don't mind. Maybe they're not my favorite, but I'm not like getting angry at them. But there are lots of mechanics where Amy is like visibly angry while we're playing. Like, why is it making me do this? I don't want to do this. And so we built a game that was like Amy's style of game that was also interesting to everybody because we have lots of gamers and lots of non-gamers in our family. And it was sort of like, it had enough depth to be interesting to everybody and also was exactly like, all of Amy's favorite stuff. And so we didn't really know that we knew that we had done that, but we weren't really able to say this is our target market. And so then you guys do workshops with Ori at Kagan Productions as part of the LaunchBoom Games. And we had found him to do our video. And as part of that,
other Kickstarter videos.
Yeah, we saw other Kickstarter videos. And he had kind of like this deep dive session to figure out like what should this video be about? How should it be made? Who should it target? And as part of that, we built our target super fan, defined like everything about her, like how old is she? What does she do? Where does she work? Well, is she a social gamer? How does she envision using this game? How many games does she have? And, we came up with this girl, Mary, who was effectively like Amy plus like having game parties.
I would like some if we had more time.
Yeah. And then from there, we were able to say, well, what meta ads is Amy going to be or Mary going to be attracted to? What box cover? And it was all, Amy's designing all this stuff. And so that really affirmed what we were sort of already planning to do. Like if you look at our Kickstarter page for like positioning and messaging, a lot of Kickstarters, you go to them and the first thing they have is a spread of all the tokens and meeples and miniatures and everything that come in the game. And the very first thing on our page was just the game on a table outside on the back half of our farm, in nature. And there were some
vintage pieces,
antique pieces with it. And then there you go. Well, that's because Amy liked that. We thought it should be first, but also then we realized that that's what Mary would like. And so when Mary looked at our Kickstarter page, Mary from Image One is ready to back this game.
We also
good to go.
Use a lot of like mechanic names, like that people that I wouldn't understand.
Yeah, just like if you of our 15,000 backers, I would be willing to guess that maybe 12,000 of them don't know or care what set collection or tableau building or randomized events are. Like they don't. Yeah. That's not something that is in there that they think about typically, but they
use the words that they would know.
Yeah. So we describe it literally. Because if you look at like some of the really hardcore games, they're like, this is 4X worker placement. And, and for their fan base, like the fan base goes, aha, I love 4X worker placement. Let's go. For our fan base, it was like,
what is that?
Yeah. So you're traveling to get flowers and, and you have, all these random things happen to you and you got to get stuff. And so we made sure to describe it in a way that answered all the questions for really hardcore gamers, but also would mean something to our target audience in the way we were sort of positioning and messaging and everything.
Awesome. And another shout out to Ori Kagan. Everyone should definitely go check out Kagan Productions. They did a great job, and we also love working with them. So we talked a lot about things that went right for your campaign. Maybe just looking at the marketing side of things, is there anything that you did to market your game that did not go well?
We paused for a little bit with Jalop for like 2 days, and those were our lowest 2 days.
Yeah, we were trying to figure out what we wanted to do, how our budget was looking and everything. And so we paused our ads with Jalop for 2 days, thinking, well, we have all this organic, it'll be fine. Let's get this figured out. Jalop was totally fine with it. They're like, okay, no problem. Let us know when you're ready to start them again. We'll get everything moving again.
And what you need to realize is that like when you're doing the advertising, it also brings in more organic, and we hadn't quite realized that.
Yeah, so there's it's not just like we were looking at it like because we have 3 other businesses. We were looking at it like we run our farm, where this flower press cost me X, it cost me this amount to ship, and this was my profit, right? But in Kickstarter, it's not just that individual sale of the unit. If you sold 100 units, now your numbers are higher. You're more attractive to this. You're higher on the rankings for the magic and the popularity. And so when we paused, even though the sales that we could directly attribute to our ads were running at a profit, but they weren't as, our thought was they weren't as high of a profit as our other sales that are organic, where we didn't have to do anything. The 2 days that we paused our ads, in addition to not having any revenue from ads, were the 2 lowest performing days we had of the entire campaign for organic. And we were like number 4 on the popularity that day. We went back and forth between like 1 and 7.
And don't get me wrong, we still made a lot of money that day.
Yeah.
It was just the lowest.
But it was the lowest out of, over the average of what everything we had done, it was the lowest 2 days. And so as soon as I realized that, I said, aha, this is not just about each individual sale. Like, this is about the momentum and everything else you're doing to drive sales across the board that way. And so we're right back, turn it back on. Let's go. I thank you for allowing me 2 days of making this mistake. And now I understand, like I needed to learn. I needed to shoot myself in the foot to learn. So learn from us. You don't have to make that mistake yourself.
Right. Yeah. Paid media, I feel like a lot of people don't understand just how powerful it is. And I like that you talked about how connected it is to everything. I mean, the organic lift that you get. And when I say organic, just for everyone listening, we mean, the Kickstarter has traffic on it. They have people that are looking for projects to back. And in order to show up higher in the rankings, you need to be a popular project. That's one of the highest weighting factors. So the simplest way to think about it, you're getting more pledges every single day. You're likely to go higher up in the rankings, which then is going to give you more free organic traffic from the platform. So everything's all connected.
Actually, it's something related to that. So this wasn't really a mistake, but it was something that we had to sort of saw and laughed at. And so there weren't a ton of people, but there were a few people that were like, oh, well, I bet they're only so successful because they spent a bunch of money on advertising. Well, yes, that's how business works. Like, do you think that
McDonald's
and Coca-Cola don't spend money on advertising? Do you think that Amazon and Whole Foods don't spend money on advertising, or Ford? Like, no one's going to buy your product if they don't know about your product. And so, just to say like, oh, I put it out there and it went viral, maybe, but that's not how you take your destiny into your own hands, right? You spend the money on advertising, you keep an eye on your return on ad spend, so you never lose money, because you watch and see, okay, well, I paid $10 for ads and I got $30 in sales and my return on ad spend was 3x, and that's good. Okay, perfect. That's just how business works. And I found it really funny that there were a few people out in the interwebs, and we all know what the interwebs is like, that had comments about like, well, they must be spending money on advertising, clearly. Well, yeah, clearly. Like, yeah.
Yeah, as if it's a bad thing. Yeah, I think there's always going to be a subset of people that view advertising as like a negative force, when in reality it can be something that is very, very good. At the end of the day, it's just connecting a product with the customer that is going to get value from that product.
Yeah, they act like you're deceiving people by advertising, and you're not. You're just making sure that people see the product and then they decide, ooh, that looks cool, I want to buy that, right? And that's advertising.
Right. So you mentioned, you still have other businesses. Like, how does BOTANY now, BOTANY is just one game, part of your business. But I'm curious, how does now creating games fit into the rest of the businesses that you have in your life? Are you keeping those other businesses? Are you all in on the games? How does it work?
We're very much about the net, where we have lots of like diversity of investments and income sources. And so luckily, it's work at home, work in the evenings. It's been a lot of work, like, don't get me wrong, but like, maybe it's, the pandemic really affected our photography business because events weren't happening. We're wedding photographers. One of our businesses is digital travel marketing platforms. Well, travel was down. And so now we have the board games going, so the farm is still running. It does its thing. There's busy periods for each of those things. But
yeah, and like, we definitely are taking a step back from weddings so much. And also the flower presses, like, I had to push pause because I was just way too busy with the board game. And we might start flower presses up soon again, but
it's enabled us to ease off of some of the things, like having to be gone 50 nights a year at weddings. Maybe we only take 10 now, 20. It's given us a little more flexibility.
5,
yeah,
9.
Not to mention, it's just like the board game business is just fun. People are like, "Oh, thanks for taking the time to meet with me." I'm like, "Are you kidding? We just spent an hour chatting about dice." Like, yeah, happy to. Like, everything is entertaining. We have a game night every Tuesday night with my friends online, and I got them into Gloomhaven, the digital version of Gloomhaven, and they're like, "Hey, do you want to play Gloomhaven tonight?" I'm like, "Are you kidding me? I don't have to feel guilty like I'm taking time from that I could be spending baking games to go and do some research on Gloomhaven, because Gloomhaven is now both fun and work. It's the most incredible mix of like, hey, kids, you want to play, Catan? And they're like, yeah, let's play Catan. And I'm like, ha ha ha. Little do they know, we're actually working right now. Like,
well, and also, like, we definitely want like a board game publishing company. I have so many ideas. Dusty's like, am I ever gonna make a game?
We will give no details right now, but she has like 15 games in the works. Yeah. And I made her focus on one as the next one, which will be coming out next year.
I may be focusing on 3.
And then I'll turn around and she's working on the one after that, and the one after that, and the one after that, right? And so, yeah, we have years worth of like release plan already figured out.
Victorian flower theme or
period. Yeah, period games. Yeah.
And then Dusty also has some that he likes he's working on.
We'll see if those ever get made.
But-
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will, that kind of leads into like market niche. We started making Dream Sliver, and Dream Sliver is, it's based on dreams I've been writing down for years about all these like really crazy characters and different things. And it's all these different genres of just like, I'll wake up at 4 a.m. I'll be like, wow, that'd be a cool character. And I'll write down whatever I was dreaming about. But,
Miniatures.
Miniatures. If you look at Kickstarter or GameFound or any of the platforms, they are very much a lot of board games, or the board game industry in general is fantasy, sci-fi, miniatures, and so if you're going to make that, there's nothing wrong with making that. I'm making that, but you got to know that you're going into a market that is very saturated. And so you have to be prepared to compete for attention, to have something that you can say is
niche down.
Yeah, it's not as niche down. It's a little more broad, and you're competing against a broader market. Whereas like what we're working on,
I don't think there's another Victorian flower game.
yeah, or if you look at so if you're the first, even better. But if you look at like Bear Mountain Camping Adventure, they're another great example, and Casey and Zoe are really cool people. And but there aren't a lot of camping games, right? Parks kinda. I can't even name any more off the top of my head.
More like
national parks is it's a much less competitive genre, and so the people that you're trying to get attention from either already have a bunch of board games, but this is something new and interesting that can fill up like a market segment, like a theme that they don't necessarily have oversaturated in their collection, or you're competing against for people like we brought in 3,000 new backers, people that they're like, hey, this is like the third game I've ever bought, and so
lots of florists. We've got lots of florists. What the largest botanical garden in the U.S. wanted to buy.
Yeah, it was the first retailer that reached out to us to buy our game. They buy a bunch of copies. And that's not to say don't make those things, but like as we are making these, these games that I kind of want to make about sci-fi and monsters and stuff, it's just something that you have to be aware of and think about and plan. And when you're working with Launch Boom, absolutely mention that to them. Hey guys, here's what I'm making. And I know I'm competing on this, and and find some marketing experts that can help you. Like, okay, well, here's the strategy that we should undertake, knowing that this is a more saturated market, or that we're doing this, and this, or like in our case, like, hey, let's advertise to people who like gardening publications. That's all. It's all just something to think about, like as you're working on your game. And so that's why we have we're super confident about all these extra historical flower games that we have in the works. And my other games, I'm just kind of like, I'll just work on those, and then when they're ready, they're ready. But it's not, it's not as big of a. I don't expect them to be like a giant money driver for us like the other stuff.
You never know.
You never know. You never know. Yeah, but
you never know. Y'all didn't think that BOTANY was going to be so successful, so you never truly know. And excited to see what's going to come down the pipeline.
No.
Hey, I wanted to go back. So I understand that you're looking to have multiple income streams, but I find the business side of this to be really fascinating, and I think others might as well. I'm curious, do you think that you could sustain yourself and your lifestyle if you were just focused on building, let's just say, a board game business? Because I do think that there are other creators out there that are looking to do just that.
Yeah, we definitely want to. Like, we're slowly like getting out of things, but also like COVID kind of
changed stuff and accelerated different things. I have a super strong opinion about this, because we have been entrepreneurs since like a couple years after we got married. And so we're going on 14 years of, well, actually I quit my job, my last job working for somebody else. I quit 11 years ago. The thing I think a lot of people get in trouble with is that they're an all or nothing. They're like, oh, I can't do a board game business, or, oh, now I have a board game business and I'm quitting my other job and everything like that. And so I think the way that, and this is the reason that so many small businesses fail.
A year or two just to make sure, because
that you have consistent income, that you have enough savings built up. And so what our Kickstarter campaign has done is it has given us a ton of working capital to run our business, and the business feels super good. That means the other businesses we can just run to pay the bills and make more profit, and and do what we need.
And back off a little.
Yeah. And so what I'm trying to say is that you should like step into it. If you have a great Kickstarter, don't go quit your job, right? Have a great Kickstarter, keep your job going, work on your next game, fund your next game, and begin to develop that consistent income for a couple years. So that like if you, I don't know.
And like we're also not really spending any of that money that we got. Like we each bought like ourselves a little something.
I bought a little too much Warhammer.
I bought Warhammer, and I bought botanical books.
Yeah, probably a few too many botanical books, but by and large, like you know, we have been working
investing in the kids wanted a pool.
They're not
like,
yeah.
No, you can't have a pool.
Yeah, we can buy the pool, but they're not getting the pool yet, and they don't understand it because that money's going back into business. Yeah, we're gonna buy more games, we're gonna sell more games, and so we broke. You know, a lot of people are on like the Kickstarter treadmill. Every project is to fund the next project, right? And for us, luckily, we knew all our math going in. We knew what kind of profit we were going to make. Then we could make decisions based on, well, here's how much working capital we'd like to have for the business going forward. Here's how much it cost us to make the game. Here's how much money we made. You know, where does all that stuff come together? And what do we need for the next game? And now we have enough for the next game. And so the next Kickstarter we run, rather than being necessary, we can already pay for the next game. And the next Kickstarter we run will be marketing, like a marketing project, and help us gauge demand. And so, you know, it's not like, oh gosh, I hope we have another $1 million campaign. If our next game is $250,000, $400,000, whatever,
which is still amazing,
which is still an incredible amount of money, that's all in the plan now because we are keeping enough on hand and we're keeping our other businesses going so that we don't get into a desperate situation. I think that's, you know, you hear that 95% of small businesses fail, and I think that's the primary reason that they fail because they don't have a backup plan and they don't allow for like sufficient room and flexibility for risk. So luckily, like when the pandemic hit, we had 2 businesses. We were able to sort of finagle them. Yeah, we started a third, and we were able to finagle all 3 enough that rather than them failing, any individual one of them would have done so good. We were able to keep everything running and work it that way. And so like for the board game business, like people have a hard time understanding, like, how can you be 100% into 4 different businesses? Well, we work a lot. But the board game business is 100%. And as if it gets to 150 and 200%, then we can start to back off that other stuff. To give ourselves a sense of that security in running our business.
Yeah, we're very much into security. Yeah, when we started doing the wedding business and he quit his other job, we took like a year or 2.
Yeah, at the time I was consulting for anybody out there that's a tech consultant. I was consulting down in Silicon Valley. And so I would get up at 5 a.m. My clients were on the East Coast in the UK. I would work till 3 p.m, and then I would spend the whole afternoon and evening doing photography stuff. Well, now that's sort of what we're doing in board games, right? We still have our clients and all our existing businesses in the beginning. I get up in the morning, I work on all that stuff in the afternoon. Evening, I work on board games and until we can start to sort of, you know, translate into that.
And then try to like streamline everything too.
Yeah,
so it works smarter.
And if you're the kind of person out there that doesn't know how to be more efficient, well, I mean, we don't know all kinds of stuff. We go to LaunchBoom, right? We go to our other vendors, we go to our manufacturer, and we say, what is the best way to do this? And then when they say, you know, this is how I would do it, you know, we change a few things here and there because it fits better with us. But for the most part, like people are like, well, you know, what did you do? I said, I did literally everything that LaunchBoom told me to do.
Yeah, we also hired Golden Goose, and they do
sales and distribution. Yeah,
and distribution. We would have had no clue how to do that.
Yeah, they're like, I would do this, this, and this. I'm like, that sounds cool. Or I would do this, 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 and this. And I'm like, well, that one thing, maybe we change it to this and that. Like, perfect. And we're, you know, and we go. Panda's like, well, you know, the best thing to do would be if you did these 3 things to get, you know, with this type of material. That sounds great. You guys are the experts, right? And so our big strength is we go out, we know how to go out and find experts.
And Dusty knows how to ask questions.
Yeah. I feel so sorry for your LaunchBoom team. I have asked them 10 million questions.
We love it. That's what we're here for. We appreciate it. I feel like everything that you just said right there, both of you, there's so much to unpack there. This could turn into a 2-hour podcast if I were going to ask a ton of questions just on that. But I do want to say, I mean, I think it's really awesome advice that you gave around like risk mitigation and thinking about, you know, you don't have to go all in on, launching this Kickstarter campaign to bring make a whole bunch of money to make this board game business come to life. Like, this can be something that you're doing on the side, which probably makes more sense as you have income coming from somewhere else. And then you test out, launching this Kickstarter campaign for your board game and seeing what happens from that. And then depending on that, go to the next stage. For BOTANY, y'all rose $1 million, which is rare. I mean, it's extremely successful. It's very rare to do that. And that gives you a whole bunch of other options, which now you're going to, you're fitting into your strategy for launching your next game and also how it affects your life in general. But anyways, great advice. I appreciate that. Speaking of advice, though, what advice do you have? Or Dusty, did you want to say something?
Well, I was going to say, actually, you made me think of something. So our thought, people are like, oh, does that mean you're risk adverse? No, we wouldn't have started a board game out of nowhere and launched a Kickstarter if we were risk averse.
Or so did our other companies.
Yeah, it's all about that, the risk mitigation, right? Well, when you get desperate, then you're in trouble. When your business gets desperate, that's when businesses fail. When you don't have options or flexibility, that's what leads you to be desperate, right? And part of what Launch Boom did for us that was so brilliant is it gave us options, right? We weren't like coming into this with just sort of having to try to pre-market and not, maybe we had 100 people on our email list or in a Facebook group or something. And then we launched a campaign and then we're not getting what we need. And then, and then we don't have any options. Oh, maybe we need to go get a loan, which we did not want to do. What do we do? What do we do here? Well, as opposed to that, so we started with your process 4 months before the campaign, 5 months before the campaign launched. And as we began going, not only did it give us options because we understood we had this many people and we could do this, and now we see we can do this, this, and this, but it also gave, that which gives us more flexibility, but also baked into your process is the sort of the whole determination of, is your campaign ready to go live, right? And if it's not, you have built-in flexibility there so that you're not like, oh, you don't figure out the day before the campaign launches, well, maybe I'm not ready, and then it flops, right? Weeks in advance after your check-ins and everything else that, yes, we're on the right track and we're going to be ready, or, well, no, this isn't working, or our ad spend is too high and maybe we need to reposition and think. So you're giving yourself options and time to adjust and to make good decisions and to dial into your target market before you click that launch button and nothing happens and you get desperate, right? So it just feeds into that whole process of just making sure of mitigating the risk that you are taking, like by knowing that your campaign is ready to launch and be successful.
Yeah. I was gonna say, I mean, just first off, I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the coolest things, or one of the main benefits of the pre-launch that a lot of people don't think about, is that it is just another way to learn and then give you further validation of, I guess validation or not of if you should launch. And it that information is super, super valuable before going into the launch. You can make projections about how successful it might be, which then allows you to make different types of choices or make different contingency plans based off of having actual data to base it off of. And, the question I was going to ask was, there's a lot of people listening. So am I. So are we at Launch Boom. Yeah. So there's a lot of people, I feel like, that, yeah, Amy's not. Yeah, that's totally fine too. But yeah, there's a lot of people that are, like kind of like sitting on the sidelines that are, they have ideas for games or products, but let's think about the person that wants to actually launch a game. I'm curious, what advice would you give to them that they're dreaming of launching a game, but they maybe are like held back a little bit from fear of doing it? What advice would you give to that potential creator?
Look into your target market.
Yeah.
Know who your buyer or
who your super fan is. That's a big one, is just knowing who your super fan is. And then that makes a lot of stuff click. Am I marketing right? Is the game fun?
So like a lot of or some people were like, oh, your game's too simple. What are you
Some
thinking?
people like your game's too complex.
No one said that.
Well, we had that. I didn't tell you about it. Yeah, we do. I don't tell Amy about a lot of the heat we get online.
Yeah, like it's understand almost that if you get heat or someone says something bad about your game or whatever, don't take it personally because they're obviously not your target market.
I'm going to go on a tangent here about this target market thing. When I was in college, my dad bought a Dodge Magnum. And if you have seen a Dodge Magnum or know what it is, it's like a really cool station wagon. And I thought that was the coolest car I had ever seen. And I had a bunch of friends that thought it was the dumbest car they had ever seen. And the Magnum, while they don't sell it anymore, was still, until the end, more or less successful. You saw them everywhere for a while. And it was because, and I actually read an article from Dodge where they were talking about this. And they're like, we don't need to make a car that 100% of people like. We need to make a car that 3% of people like, really like. Right? And that has stuck with me forever about how this horrible, ugly car that I just thought was the neatest thing on the planet could be, yeah, Amy didn't either, which is probably why she's, she thought it was cool to ride around in it. But, you think about that for your game. Know who your target audience is, and then recognize that not everybody is good at everything.
And you don't have to please everyone.
Yeah, there's this thing out in the world called wealth dynamics that talks about your path to success. And it's almost like a personality test, and you can take a look at it if you want, but it basically says like, here's what you're good at. So I'm really good at
telling people what to do,
strategy and emails and like, oh, we should do this, this, and this. And here's a system that could run this whole thing and all this stuff and numbers and math. And Amy can create for days. I like Amy is more creative in the 15 minutes leading up to this podcast than I am in a whole year. And she can just create. Well, so between the two of us, we can do a fair number of things.
But Dusty manages.
I help her focus. Like, we need to work on this. But we're not good at selling. So we went out and found people to sell. I hate selling. We went out and found people to sell for us. We're not great at marketing. We found LaunchBoom. We found GelUp. We're not good. We don't know how to do a multinational cross-ocean manufacturing. I went out and found people that can help me do that, right? And so what you need to do is, and a lot of people suffer from paralysis here, is just find one of those places. So for us, we found LaunchBoom. That was the first thing we did. We found LaunchBoom. LaunchBoom got us thinking about other things. Like I said, Maria at LaunchBoom helped us find our manufacturer. When I talked to the manufacturer, they're experts. They had some recommendations, or in places that they didn't do something, they pointed us to other people.
Yeah, and don't be afraid to hire people because, honestly, Golden Goose has saved us so much more money than we've paid them.
Yeah. And
you will make more money by hiring people to do the jobs that they're...
That's exactly right. Yeah, that's exactly right. LaunchBoom, I mean, if you look at our investment...
At first, we were like, do we have that money?
We're like, okay, we have that amount of money. We can spend it. It's a leap of faith, but if nothing comes of it, it's not going to sink us, right? That's what you don't want to do. That you don't want to go out and dump a bunch of money that you can't survive losing. But if you're sitting on $500, go find someone who can help you for $500, even if they're only consulting for 5 hours, and they can point you in the right direction, right? That money will not be wasted because you are saving yourself on what you don't necessarily know. Finding an expert who does know and listen to what they say. And, so okay, Botany was a cool idea and we positioned it right, but would it have been a $1 million campaign without LaunchBoom, without Golden Goose, without Ori at Kagan Productions, without GelUp, without Panda, without Kickstarter? No, not even close, right? We recognized all these things were really smart things to do. We didn't have to reinvent the wheel. We found people to help us make these things happen. And the money that we put into that, which, like I said, was money that we could have lost and we would have been okay. The money we put into it resulted in the outcome, right? And so, the amount of the outcome was incredible, but the fact that we were going to have a successful outcome was as close to not in question as it could possibly get.
All right. I don't know of a better way to end it than that with all the advice that you're given. There's been so many nuggets. Again, I feel like I could ask so many follow-up questions to keep this going, but we do have to end it because at a certain point, we'll be here all day. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us. And I'd love to know, what are some places that we can keep up with you, or you want people to give us some links? Where are some places that you want to send the audience that's listening?
So coming off of Instagram and off of our photography and our farm, Instagram is a really good place to get a hold of us. So we're Dux Somnium on Instagram, DuxSomnium. And then also, if you go to our website, duxsomnium.com, those are the two best places to get a hold of us. We are all about customer service, so we answer every message we get. We do our best to give it full attention to all our customers. So if you have any questions, you need help with anything, I wish somebody would have helped us, shoot us an email or a message someplace, and we'll get back to you.
Awesome. Short and sweet. I love it. Amy and Dusty, thanks so much for joining us. I really, really appreciate it and sharing all the wisdom and your story with all the listeners.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yep, absolutely.